Imagine walking into a dusty old bookstore on a rainy afternoon. It feels like time stopped the moment you stepped in. Picture yourself entering an old shop filled with books on a rainy day. Everything feels frozen in time the second you walk through the door, like stepping into another world. You pull out a tattered book, its cover faded, pages yellow. But inside, there's more than just the author's story. You pick up an old, worn-out book with a dull cover and yellow pages. But when you look inside, you discover it holds more than just the words the writer left behind. Someone's handwritten notes fill the margins, thoughts, questions, even little arguments with the author. You're not just reading anymore. You find handwriting scrawled along the edges of the pages, ideas, doubts, and even small debates with the writer. Suddenly, it's more than just reading. It feels like you're chatting with another reader. You start to acquire knowledge from this mysterious reader, seeing things you never would have noticed on your own. You begin to learn new ideas from this unknown person, noticing details and viewpoints you wouldn't have seen by yourself. Ever found knowledge in the weirdest places? Like an old letter, a random chat, or even a big mistake you made? Have you ever discovered something useful in the strangest spots? Like a faded letter, a casual online talk, or even from messing up badly? Where do you think you could acquire knowledge like that? Where do you think you could pick up insights like that, unexpectedly and without planning? You might say, you can acquire knowledge from books, sure, but people's stories teach you more. Or maybe, he acquired knowledge by traveling, not sitting in some boring classroom. You might say, you can learn things from books, of course, but listening to other people's life stories teaches you even more. Or maybe, he gained new lessons by exploring the world instead of staying stuck in a dull class. But acquiring knowledge isn't always about books. Sometimes it's about pushing limits and trying stuff that scares you. But gaining new understanding isn't only about reading. Sometimes it means stepping out of your comfort zone and doing things that make your heart pound. Ever wondered why people jump out of planes or climb crazy high cliffs? It usually starts with a simple dare. Have you thought about why some folks skydive or scale towering cliffs? Often, it begins with a quick challenge someone throws at them. One day, someone says, "Come on, just try it." And before you know it, you acquire a taste for danger. Then one day, a friend says, "Go on, give it a shot." And suddenly you develop a liking for taking risks. Suddenly sitting still feels scarier than free-falling through the sky. All at once, staying in one place seems more frightening than leaping into thin air. Where do you think you might acquire a taste for something risky? Maybe trying a wild sport. Where could you pick up a craving for risky fun? Maybe by starting an extreme sport. Or taking a chance in life that feels scary but exciting. Or by making a bold move in your life, something that's frightening but also full of excitement. You could say, at first she was terrified of surfing, but now she's acquired a taste for danger. You might say, she was really scared to surf at first, but now she's grown to love that scary thrill. Or, he hated fast driving at first, but he acquired a taste for it after a few rides. Or, he used to dislike speeding in a car, but after trying it a few times, he started enjoying the rush. Now, here's a fun thing about the word acquire. It comes from Latin, acquirere, meaning to get or gain. Here's something cool about the verb acquire. Long ago, it came from a Latin word, acquirere, which means to get or obtain. Back then, it was all about getting stuff you could touch, like land or gold. Picture a merchant saying, "I must acquire more silk." In the past, people used it for collecting real objects, like land and treasure. Imagine a trader exclaiming, "I have to get more silk to sell." But over time, it started to mean gaining things you can't see, like knowledge, skills, or even tastes. Crazy how words change, right? Later, the meaning grew to include things you can't hold, like new ideas, abilities, or favorite flavors. Wild how language shifts over time, right? Think about it. Acquiring knowledge feels slow and thoughtful, but acquiring a taste for danger? That's all thrill and excitement. Think about it. Picking up new knowledge feels calm and careful, but when you develop a liking for risk, it's full of adrenaline and excitement. Acquire stays the same, but the feeling totally shifts depending on what you're gaining. The word stays the same, but it feels different depending on whether you're learning facts or craving adventure. Now, if you compare acquire to a word like get, there's a big difference. Get sounds easy, like grabbing a snack. If you compare acquire with something like get, there's a clear difference. Get sounds quick and simple, like picking up a cookie. But acquire? That feels like you've earned something, worked for it, or grown into it. But acquire sounds like you've put in effort or gone through a process to obtain something valuable. So next time you use acquire, think about what you're really gaining. Is it knowledge, a new experience, or a little thrill? So when you use this word again, remember what you're truly getting. Maybe it's fresh information, a new adventure, or a spark of excitement. Imagine a guy who wants to get rich fast. He tries everything: online scams, risky stocks, even selling weird gadgets. Picture a man who's eager to make a fortune overnight. He jumps on shady web offers, invests in volatile shares, and even peddles oddball items. He thinks, I'll acquire wealth in no time. But things don't go as planned. Every scheme fails. He loses money but makes friends. He believes, I'll be rolling in cash any moment now. But nothing works out. Each plan bombs. He ends up short on funds but high on friendships. People laugh with him, support him, and stick around when he's broke. In the end, he realizes, maybe I didn't acquire wealth, but I gained something better. Everyone jokes around with him, backs him up, and stays close even when he's out of money. Finally, he understands. I may not have gotten rich, but I found something more precious. Where do you think acquire wealth fits in your life? Maybe you've met someone chasing money, thinking that's all that matters. Where do you feel getting rich lines up in your own world? Maybe you've come across a person who runs after cash, convinced it's the only big deal. You might say, he's trying to acquire wealth, but he's missing out on real life. Or maybe, I thought I'd acquire wealth, but I ended up acquiring wisdom instead. You could say, he's out to load up on money, but he's skipping what truly counts. Or perhaps, I figured I'd get a big bank account, but instead I picked up some real smarts. Now think about this. One day, you take a short walk after dinner, just to clear your head, nothing big. Now picture this scene. You go for a brief stroll in the evening just to unwind a bit, no big deal. The next day, you do it again, and again. Without noticing, you acquire a habit. Weeks pass and those little walks grow. The day after, you repeat it. Then again. Suddenly you form a new routine. A few weeks go by and those small walks get longer. Soon they turn into long hikes, maybe even marathons. You didn't plan it. You just picked up a new routine without thinking. Before you know it, they evolve into serious treks, maybe even marathon training. You never meant for it, it just snuck into your daily life. Have you ever acquired a habit without realizing it? Maybe biting your nails when stressed or checking your phone all the time. Have you ever slipped into a habit without noticing? Maybe nibbling your nails when nervous or constantly refreshing your phone. You could say, I accidentally acquired a habit of waking up early and now I love it. Or, she acquired a habit of writing daily and now she's publishing a book. You might say, I stumbled into the routine of getting up early and now I'm hooked. Or, she started writing every single day and now she's putting out a book. Funny how acquire can mean getting money or picking up a simple habit, right? One is about wealth, the other about behavior. It's interesting how one word can refer to stacking up cash or slipping into a basic habit, isn't it? One's about money, the other's about your actions. but both mean gaining something over time, whether you wanted it or not. But in both cases, you end up with something new along the way, whether you set out to or not. Now, picture this. You apply for a job you're totally not ready for. On day one, you spill coffee on your boss. Now, imagine you land a position you have no clue how to handle. On your very first day, you drench your boss with coffee. You forget names, mess up tasks, and feel like a total disaster. But after a few weeks, you start figuring things out. You keep mixing up people's names, botch your duties, and think you're hopeless. But after a couple of weeks, you begin to catch on. By the end of the month, you've acquired experience, not just in the job, but in handling awkward moments with confidence. When the month wraps up, you've gathered know-how, not just about the work itself, but also about handling cringe-worthy slip-ups with poise. Where have you acquired experience in your life? Maybe in school, at work, or even in relationships. Where have you picked up your skills? Maybe in class, on the job, or while dealing with people in your life. You might say, I acquired experience by making mistakes, but now I know what I'm doing. Or he acquired experience the hard way, but it made him stronger. You could say, I learned by messing things up and now I've got the hang of it. Or he went through tough lessons, but it made him tougher in the end. So whether it's wealth, habits, or experience, acquire always means gaining something, sometimes by accident, sometimes through effort. So whether you're talking about money, routines, or know-how, it's all about getting something, maybe by luck, maybe by hustle. But the cool part? What you acquire isn't always what you expected. And the best bit? What you end up with might be way different from what you had in mind. Imagine you start sharing a weird little hobby online. Maybe you paint tiny faces on pebbles. At first, people just laugh. Let's say you begin posting a quirky pastime, like drawing mini faces on rocks, on the internet. At first, folks find it silly and giggle. They leave comments like, "What is this?" or "Why would anyone do that?" But then something changes. People start copying you. They type things like, "Huh? Why do that?" But soon a shift happens. Other people begin doing the same thing you do. They post their own pebble faces and tag you. Without even trying, you acquire influence. Suddenly, your silly hobby is a big trend. They upload pictures of their own rock portraits and mention you. You automatically gain a following. All of a sudden, your odd pastime becomes super popular. You might think, I didn't plan this, but here you are inspiring people without even knowing it. You could be like, this wasn't my intention, but you end up motivating others and don't even realize it. Where could you use acquire influence in your life? Maybe you post your workouts online and friends start asking for tips. In what parts of your life might you build a following? Maybe you share your exercise videos and your buddies begin requesting advice. Or you share your art and suddenly people are following your style, trying to do what you do. Or you showcase your artwork and before you know it, folks start imitating your approach, hoping to replicate your moves. You could say, I never thought I'd acquire influence just by sharing my morning runs. Or, she acquired influence at work by staying calm under pressure. You might say, I never expected to gain a reputation just from uploading my daily jogs. Or, she built a strong presence at her job by staying cool when things got tough. See, influence isn't always about fame. It's how your actions affect others, even in small ways. Remember, having an impact on people doesn't always mean you're a superstar. It's about how what you do touches their lives, even if it's just a little bit. Now let's switch it up. Picture yourself at the DMV standing in the longest line ever. The clock ticks, people sigh. Okay, let's change the scene. Imagine you're at a government office with a crazy long queue. Time crawls by and everyone's groaning. Frustration is everywhere, but after a while, something weird happens. You stop feeling annoyed. Everyone feels irritated, but Suddenly, something odd takes place. You don't get mad anymore. You start noticing little things. The guy tapping his foot, the kid making faces, the old lady humming a tune. You begin picking up on small details like the dude bouncing his leg, the child pulling silly expressions, the elderly woman softly singing. Without realizing it, you've acquired patience. The waiting doesn't even bother you anymore. Before you know it, you've grown more patient. The wait isn't even an issue now. When do you think you've acquired patience in your life? Maybe waiting for coffee every morning or dealing with slow Wi-Fi? When do you think you've developed calmness in your own day-to-day? Maybe standing in line for coffee or handling a lagging internet. You might say, after teaching kids for a year, I've definitely acquired patience. Or he acquired patience from dealing with his chatty neighbor every day. Perhaps you'd say, spending a year teaching children has definitely made me more tolerant. Or, he learned to stay patient after talking to his talkative neighbor every single day. Patience isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, like a skill. Patience isn't in your DNA at birth. It's something you slowly develop, just like any other ability. Just like influence, it sneaks up on you when you least expect it. Just like having an impact on others, it quietly appears when you're not looking. Let's talk about something different. Imagine you hate opera music. It sounds too loud, too dramatic. Let's switch topics. Suppose you dislike opera. Maybe it feels over the top and noisy. But one day, stuck in traffic, an opera song plays on the radio. You can't change the station, so you listen. Then one day, you're in a traffic jam and an opera piece comes on. You can't switch channels, so you end up hearing it. The next day, you hear it again. And then something clicks. Soon, you're sitting front row at the opera house. The very next day, you catch it once more. Suddenly, it makes sense to you, and before long, you're right up front at an opera performance. You're wondering how this became your new favorite thing. That's what we call an acquired taste. You wonder how it turned into your new obsession. We call that a taste you gradually learn to love. Have you ever developed an acquired taste for something? Maybe black coffee, spicy food, or some weird TV show? Have you ever grown to enjoy something that was off-putting at first? Like straight black coffee, very hot dishes, or a strange TV series? You could say, I used to hate sushi, but now I love it. Definitely an acquired taste. Maybe you'd say, I was never into sushi before, but now I'm hooked. It's definitely something I had to get used to. Or, opera was an acquired taste for me, but now I can't get enough. Or, opera was something I needed time to appreciate, but now I'm obsessed. An acquired taste isn't just about food or music. It's about learning to like something over time. Getting used to something isn't just for meals or tunes. It involves discovering how to enjoy it after a while. Even if you didn't like it at first. Even if initially it wasn't your thing at all. So, what's the link between influence, patience, and acquired tastes? They all take time. So how do having an effect on others, staying calm, and growing fond of something connect? They each require a bit of time. You don't just wake up with them, you grow into them, sometimes without even realizing it. These qualities don't just show up overnight, you develop them bit by bit. Often you won't even notice. Whether it's inspiring people, learning to wait, or falling for something unexpected, acquire is all about the process. Whether you're motivating others, practicing patience, or discovering a surprising new interest, the key is that it's all about the journey. It's not instant, but that's what makes it special. It doesn't happen right away, and that's exactly why it feels so unique. They stood on the rooftop terrace, the city lights stretching out beneath them. The deal was sealed, the champagne poured. They were up on a high rooftop, with the bright city shining below them. Their agreement was final, and they had champagne ready to celebrate. The businessman leaned on the railing, looking out over the skyline, while his assistant scrolled through her phone, pretending not to enjoy the view as much as he did. The man in the suit rested on the railing, gazing at the spread of buildings, while his helper fiddled with her phone, acting like the sight wasn't as cool to her as it was to him. You know, he said, tilting his glass, people think closing deals is all about luck, but really, it's about what you acquire over time. Listen, he remarked, tipping his drink. Most folks believe that making deals is just luck, but honestly, it's about what you learn as you go. She glanced up, raising an eyebrow. Like what? Money? He chuckled. Sure, that. But also knowledge, experience, even taste. She looked up with a curious face. Like what, cash? He laughed. Yeah, that too, but also know-how, practice, even a sense of style. She laughed, setting her phone down. All right, Professor, enlighten me. She let out a laugh and put down her phone. Okay, teacher, I'm listening. He took a sip. Take Benjamin Franklin. The guy literally flew a kite in a thunderstorm, hoping to acquire knowledge about lightning. He had a drink. Think about Benjamin Franklin. The man actually flew a kite in a storm because he wanted to learn more about lightning. Can you believe that? He risked getting fried just to prove a theory. Crazy, right? He was willing to get shocked just to show he was correct. She grinned. That's one way to spark an idea. She smiled widely. Well, that's one way to light up your thoughts. Exactly, he nodded. But think about it, that's dedication. He didn't just stumble on knowledge. He acquired it, even if it meant nearly electrocuting himself. Exactly, he agreed. But look at that commitment. He didn't just trip over new information. He built it up, even if he almost zapped himself. She tapped her glass thoughtfully. Risking it all for knowledge? Sounds familiar. He smirked. Yeah, but at least we didn't need a kite today. She gently tapped her glass and thought. Putting it all on the line for learning, I can relate. He grinned. True, but at least we skipped the kite this time. She leaned back against the railing, thinking. You know who else comes to mind? Julia Child? Julia Child? He repeated, surprised. The cooking lady? She rested against the rail, pondering. Guess who else I'm thinking of? Julia Child. Julia Child, he echoed, surprised. That chef on TV? Not just the cooking lady, she said, smiling. She moved to France, didn't know a thing about their food, but over time she acquired a taste for French cuisine. She was more than just a cook, she said with a grin. She went to France, knew nothing about their dishes, but slowly she learned to love French cooking. Then she brought it back to America and made everyone fall in love with it. He chuckled. So, you're saying closing deals and cooking coq au vin are the same thing? Then she brought it all home to the States and got everybody hooked. He laughed. So you're telling me closing deals is like making fancy French food? Well, she shrugged. It's about developing a taste for something unfamiliar. At first you might not get it, but the more you dive in, the more you start craving it. Well, she said, shrugging lightly, it's about getting used to something new. At first you might not understand it, but the deeper you go, the more you want it. He nodded, amused. So you're saying I've acquired a taste for high-stakes negotiations? Exactly, she laughed. And expensive champagne. He nodded with a smile. So you're telling me I've grown fond of risky business talks? Exactly, she giggled. And pricey bubbly. He finished his drink, the city breeze ruffling his tie. All right, one more for you. Tenzing Norgay. She tilted her head. The Everest guy? He took the last sip, the wind messing up his tie. Okay, I have one more name, Tenzing Norgay. She cocked her head. Wait, the Everest climber? Yeah, he said. People remember Edmund Hillary, but Tenzing? He acquired experience year after year, guiding others up that mountain before he finally reached the top himself. Yep, he replied. Everyone talks about Edmund Hillary, but Tenzing? He built his skills over many seasons, helping people climb that huge peak until he finally got there himself. She whistled. Now that's patience. Right, he nodded. He didn't just wake up one day and climb Everest. She let out a low whistle. That's real patience. Exactly, he agreed. He didn't just jump out of bed and tackle Everest. He learned from every step, every slip, every near miss. That's how you conquer mountains. Business ones, too. He picked up lessons from every move, every fall, every close call. That's the key to beating big challenges. Yes, even in business. She smiled, looking out over the city again. So what you're saying is, whether it's lightning, French food, or Everest, it's all about what you acquire along the way. She smiled, gazing at the skyline once more. So you're saying that whether it's about lightning, French cooking, or Everest, it's all about what you learn on the journey. Exactly, he said, clinking his glass against hers. Knowledge, taste, experience, they're the real wins. Yes, he replied, gently tapping his glass to hers. Knowing things, developing flavor, getting real practice, those are the true prizes. And here I thought it was just the money, she teased. He laughed. That's just the bonus. And I figured it was all about the money, she joked. He laughed out loud. That's just the extra treat. Imagine fixing your neighbor's fence one day. You didn't plan to be a hero, you just didn't want the fence falling into your yard. Think about helping your neighbor fix his fence. You never wanted to be a hero, you only wanted to stop it from landing in your yard. But the next morning, people in the neighborhood start calling you the handyman hero. You laugh, thinking it's just a joke. Then the next day, everyone around starts calling you the handyman hero. You find it funny because you believe they're not serious. Soon, someone else asks, "Hey, can you help me fix my gate?" Without even trying, you acquire a reputation as the guy who can fix anything. Next, someone else says, "Hey, could you repair my gate?" All at once, people label you as the go-to fix-it person, even though you never planned it. You might hear people say, "You can always count on him. He's the best with tools." Or you'd think, "How did I end up the neighborhood carpenter?" You hear neighbors say things like, "He's so reliable with any tool." Or you wonder to yourself, "How did I become the local handyman?" Have you ever acquired a reputation for something you didn't expect? Maybe you helped once, and now everyone thinks you're an expert. Have you ever gained a surprising reputation for something? Maybe you gave someone a hand one time, and suddenly people think you're a pro. It's funny how small things can grow into something bigger. It's interesting how a tiny action can turn into something much larger. Now, let's step into a different story. Imagine moving to a city where no one speaks your language. At first, it's tough. Now, let's change scenes. Picture yourself moving to a place where nobody talks like you do. It feels hard at the start. You point, gesture, and hope people understand. It feels like acting in a silent movie. But day by day, you acquire a new language. You use your hands, facial expressions, and hope others get your meaning. It's like you're in a silent film. But little by little, you learn a new language. You don't just learn words, you pick up jokes, local slang, and even start thinking like the people around you. You don't only study vocabulary, you also absorb jokes, local sayings, and begin seeing things like the people around you. You might say, "I couldn't say a word when I arrived, but now I'm telling jokes in this language." Maybe you find yourself saying, "When I got here, I could hardly speak, but now I'm making jokes in this language." Or someone could ask you, "Wow, how did you acquire the language so fast?" Or people might be amazed and say, "Wow, how did you pick up this language so quickly?" Learning a new language isn't just memorizing words, it's about acquiring a new way to see the world. Studying a new tongue isn't only about memorizing words, it's about finding a fresh perspective on life. Just like fixing that fence gave you a reputation, learning these words gives you a whole new identity. Just as fixing your neighbor's fence made you known for your skills, using these words can give you a brand new image of who you are. Now picture this. You buy an old, broken down house. You think, well, at least I've acquired an asset. It's mine, even if it's falling apart. Now imagine you purchase a rundown home. You tell yourself, well, at least it belongs to me, even if it's in terrible shape. But as you start fixing it up, you find something strange. A letter hidden in the wall, then another. But when you begin your repairs, you discover something odd. A letter tucked away in the wall, then another one. Suddenly, your simple house becomes a puzzle, leading you to an old family mystery. All at once, your plain house turns into a puzzle, pointing you toward an old family secret. You could say, I thought I was just buying a house, but I acquired an adventure. You might exclaim, I thought I was only getting a house, but I ended up with an entire adventure. Or your friend might laugh and say, that's more than just an asset now. Your friend could smile and say, now it's way more than just a piece of property. In this case, acquire isn't just about owning something. It's about getting more than you expected. Here, it's not only about having something. It's about receiving more than you ever imagined. First, you think you're gaining something simple, a house, a skill, or a language. But it turns into something bigger. At first, you believe you're getting just a house, a talent, or a new way of speaking. But it grows into something much larger. So, whether you acquire a reputation, a new language, or an asset, the word shows how small things can turn into unexpected stories. So, whether you end up with a reputation, a new language, or a piece of property, it all shows how little moments can become surprising tales. It's about getting more than just the basics. It's about gaining experience, identity, or even a little mystery. It means you receive more than the usual stuff. You also gain knowledge, a new sense of who you are, or even a hint of mystery. Imagine sitting alone on a park bench, minding your own business. Out of nowhere, an old man sits next to you. Picture yourself sitting on a bench in the park, just relaxing. Suddenly, an elderly gentleman appears by your side. He starts talking, sharing stories from his life, mistakes he made, lessons he learned. At first, you just nod politely. He begins telling you about his past, his errors, and what he discovered from them. At first, you just smile and listen. But soon you're hooked. By the time he leaves, you've acquired wisdom no school or book could ever give you. But pretty soon, you're really drawn in. By the moment he goes, you've gained insights you'd never get from any classroom or textbook. Life has funny ways of teaching, doesn't it? Where do you think you could acquire wisdom like that? Life teaches us in strange ways, right? Where else do you think you could pick up that kind of wisdom? Maybe from a grandparent or a random stranger? You might think, wow, I never looked at life that way. Maybe from your grandma or grandpa or even a stranger. You might say, whoa, I never saw things like that before. Or you could say, I guess wisdom really does come from experience. Wisdom isn't just knowledge. It sticks with you. Or you might say, I guess real understanding grows from living through stuff. Wisdom isn't just facts. It stays in your mind. It's the kind of lesson you don't forget. It's a teaching that stays with you forever. Now imagine you're dropped in a tiny village far from home. Nobody speaks your language. You feel lost at first. Next, picture landing in a small, distant village. No one understands your words, and you feel confused at the start. But slowly, you start picking things up: how to cook local dishes, fish like the villagers, even dance at their festivals. But little by little, you learn how to make their meals, catch fish the way they do, and join in their festive dances. Without even realizing it, you acquire skills just by being there. No words, just doing. Before you notice, you build new abilities simply from living there. No talking, just action. When was the last time you acquired skills without lessons? Maybe cooking from YouTube? Or fixing something at home? Think about when you last picked up a new skill with no formal class. Maybe following a cooking video online or mending something yourself. You might say, I didn't know I could do this. Or think, I never needed words to learn that. You might exclaim, I had no idea I could do this. Or realize, I learned that without anyone telling me how. Acquiring skills isn't always about classes. Sometimes life throws you in, and you've got no choice but to learn. Learning new things doesn't always involve school. Sometimes life just drops you in, and you figure it out on the spot. Now let's switch it up. Ever hated a food the first time you tried it? Think of blue cheese. Let's talk about something different. Have you ever disliked a food when you first tasted it? Like blue cheese? Strong, weird smell, right? But imagine someone dares you to eat it again and again. It's got a powerful, unusual odor, right? But picture someone pushing you to try it over and over. Suddenly, you find yourself liking it. That's what it means to acquire a taste for something. Then suddenly you notice you actually enjoy it. That's what it means to slowly get used to a flavor. It's funny how your likes can change over time. What's something you've acquired a taste for? It's interesting how your tastes change. What's something you've grown to enjoy after a while? Maybe black coffee or spicy food. You might laugh and say, I used to hate this, but now I love it. Could be bitter coffee or hot peppers. You might laugh and say, I couldn't stand this before, but now it's great. Or think, how did I ever live without this? Acquiring a taste isn't just about food. Or you might wonder, how did I go so long without it? Getting used to a new flavor can be about more than just eating. It can be music, hobbies, or even experiences, like learning to love rainy days or early mornings. It might be songs, pastimes, or even moments, like finding joy in rainy weather or sunrise hours. So, what do these stories have in common? Whether you acquire wisdom, skills, or a taste for something, it's all about experience. So, what ties these stories together? Whether you're gaining wisdom, picking up abilities, or getting used to something new, it's all about living through it. You don't always plan for it. Sometimes it just happens. And that's the beauty of acquire, gaining something over time. You don't always see it coming. Sometimes it simply unfolds. And that's the magic of growing, slowly adding something new to yourself. Often you don't even realize it until one day it's part of you. Most of the time, you don't notice until one day you see it's become a part of who you are.